I'm not going to be around forever, right? And at some point, all you're going to have is the memory of what I told you. So make sure you stop and listen to what I say, because there's going to come a point where I'm not going to be around and you're going to wish, damn, I wish my dad was around or tell me something. So, but I always look for those teachable moments and, try to help him, see, hey, I could do this better, or, always be, you always got to be professional on set.
Welcome back to another episode of This My Baby Daddy podcast. It's your boy AJ.
It's the bougie baby daddy Eli.
And today we have a special guest. We have actor John Nicholson, but we're not going to introduce him as that. We're going to introduce him as father of actor Phoenix Nicholson, Mr. John Nicholson. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm glad we finally was able to get this together and I was able to come on with y'all, man. This is definitely was something high up on my list to do.
Oh man, and that's one thing that AJ and I were talking about. We appreciated about you for so long, because you've actually been there, supported from the very beginning, and we wanted to make it happen, because like people that support people that have a story are people that need to be heard. And so, like I said, again, for you to take your time out your busy schedule to sit with us, share your story, share your insight. You might have a couple gems of wisdom to share with the people. And some stories. I mean, we happy to have you.
Appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, well, shit, let's get into it.
Yeah, we're gonna get right into it. We're gonna get you started. The first question we ask everybody: what does it mean to you to be a father?
Man, wow. So, wow, like it's a privilege, and it's an awesome responsibility, and it's a blessing, right? Like I can honestly say that, like, fatherhood, as much as I didn't want it, because I was that dude who did not want to be a dad. I didn't want kids, and I know a lot of that was caught up with like my own shit with my own dad, and what I'm saying, like the negative relationship I had with him, and so I didn't see the value in fatherhood. I didn't see, like, it was nothing that I was looking forward to, and then my son was born, and like I just was like, it allowed me, man, by watching him, being with him, it allowed me to fix a lot of hurt that I had within me. You know what I'm saying? And like, and it was a do-over in a lot of ways, right? Because I got to maybe see how I could have been, how I had, if I had had a different relationship with my dad. So fatherhood for me, man, it just means, like, it's love, it's infinite patience, it's it's hard work, it's responsibility. It can be frustrating sometimes. I mean, there's a whole lot, but like, just overall, man, fatherhood to me is just, it's love, and it's guidance.
So you talking about your father? Kind of give us an idea without going, too in depth.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like the bad molded you into wanting to be a great father. But how is that? Like, what are some of the things that you had to take from that, fix? Things that you learned along the way that you wanted to make sure that you didn't repeat. Like, give us a little insight on that.
So my dad, man, was he was present in our lives, like, physically, but he was also like a negative presence, right? So he was like a really bad alcoholic, and a lot of times, I guess, and it was a very dysfunctional, situation, and like a lot of times with people who have alcohol or drug problems, when they get in that mindset, they say things to kids that kids should never hear, right? Like, my dad would, he start drinking, and and then he would just start, his punching bags mentally and physically was everybody who was around him. And so he would start drinking, and he would just start saying, shit like, you kids have fucked my life up, and my life was great before y'all came along, and and he talked shit about my mom, and and he talking shit to me about my brothers and sisters. And it was just like, I remember, like, there was one time, man, like I was maybe like 5 or 6, and my dad worked at night. He would come home in the morning, and then like once he got home in the morning, he would immediately start drinking. And so he was cool for like the first half an hour, but an hour in,
Mm-hmm.
the devil
Yeah.
was unleashed, right? And I'm eating cereal, trying to watch cartoons and shit, and he's, talking about how much, me and my brothers and sisters have fucked his life up, and so I remember even thinking at that point, like what am I supposed to do with this information, right? I'm 6,
Yeah.
you brought me here, right? And so like I'm here because you had sex with my mom, so like how am I supposed to process what you telling me? And as a kid, I don't think you really even have the ability to really process it. You just know, like, I'm hearing this negative shit and it sits with you, right? And
Right.
I didn't have a outlet. I didn't have an outlet for that. So I think in part that's why I never saw any value in fatherhood, right? Like I just thought like this fatherhood has made this dude so unhappy, right? That where's the positive, or where's the value in that? So like why would I want to have a situation like that? Why would I, but I think when my son was born, um, I just thought, you know what? It shit'll stop with me, right? Like I will never allow, like, I mean, there are times, being a parent, there's times where you feel levels of frustration and whatever, but you never say it to your kid, right? You never share that shit with your kid. It's you feel it, and you got to find a positive way to vent that, right? And so like, but your kid doesn't need to hear that because they can't process it properly, and it's not going to do anything positive for them, right? So as a responsible adult, you got to find other ways, you know what I'm saying? And so, and just the whole seeing my dad as an alcoholic, and it was just it just was, it was not, the way he used to fight with my mom and hit on my mom, and it was so much negativity surrounding parenthood and being a dad. Like I couldn't see any positive to doing that or being that. And then my son comes along, and it gave me the opportunity to recognize that, like, it doesn't have to be like that, right? Like it could
Mm.
be, it could be different if I'm different. And I spent a lot of my early years, man, like really angry at my dad, like really, like, you know, just angry. But I think as once my son was born and I started having this relationship with him, and I saw all the magical moments, you know what I mean, that I have with my kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you in your kid's life and you spending time with him or her, y'all are gonna have those bonding, those magical moments where you look at your kid and you see glimpses of yourself or whatever, and so I started feeling sorry for my dad. You know what I mean? Because I realized that, like,
Wow.
because of his own shit, he missed out. Like he never got to experience what could have, like, there's moments I've had with my kid, man, where I just, I wouldn't give it up for $10 million. I would never give up those moments, and my dad never got to experience that because his issues kept him from being able to experience that. And so, I found a way to find forgiveness for him, because I just feel like, man, dude, you missed out. You were so busy being angry and drunk and whatever, you missed out on magic, man. And so I'm just grateful that I get a chance to have that with to have that with my kid.
And how's your relationship with your dad now?
He passed away, and so like I remember I was at the hospital the day he died, and he was always that dude that I always was like, I think as a son, man, you just have this natural inclination to want to connect with your dad. It's natural. It's the male figure that you look up to, and I wanted this dude's love and admiration so badly. And it's funny because younger, my dad was never really into sports, but he was into boxing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I started boxing because I wanted to, like, find some shit that I could do that
That you
he
can
would.
relate to.
Yeah, and my
Yeah.
mom used
Right.
to pull me to the side and she'd be like, "Boy, you don't want to get fucking punched in your face." Right? You don't want, them dudes is, nose broken and teeth not.
Hold on. Were you any good?
I was alright. I don't think, but I don't. Boxing wasn't for me, but
Yeah.
it just was what I wanted to do to try and get his attention, right? Like to try and
Yep.
get his approval. And it didn't matter because he never, he never came to like watch me. It didn't matter.
Mm.
So I felt like, I was always looking to try and get this dude to like, I wanted the arm around me. I love you. I'm proud of you. You know what I'm saying? And I never got that. And when he died, I just felt like, this dude has gone. I never had a real relationship with him. I never really understood him. I never understood like, why he was the way he was. And then it was like, what I'm saying, in a flash, he was gone. And then, that was it. And so it was just like, and once your parent is dead, whatever questions you have, that shit goes to the,
It's too late. Yeah.
yeah, it goes to the grave with them. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So it sounds like, because when you're trying to overcome years of pain or years of struggle, years of just all that stuff you had to go through, and then you have your son, and when you start thinking about, okay, well, I want to not repeat what I went through.
hmm
But was that instantaneous, or how was that process to kind of get you to kind of to open your
yeah,
eyes
no,
up to see what you wanted to do?
it was instantaneous. It was when
Oh.
he was born, and I held dude, right? Like he's, 20 seconds old. It was, I looked at him and I said, I even literally said, I will be the dad, and I use this hashtag a lot when I post stuff. Be the dad you wish you had. And so
Mm-hmm.
I looked at him and I was like, "Yo, I'm gonna be the dad to you that I wish I had for me." And like it was literally from that moment forward, and yeah, it was from the moment he was born. I had just made this conscious decision that I'm gonna give this kid all the love and what I'm saying that I never got, right? Because I think I, my dad never told me he loved me. Dad never told me he was proud of me. Dad never. I mean, he said all the stuff I heard from him was all the negative stuff, right? You
Hmm.
stupid and you whatever, whatever. But I never heard any of the positives. And kids need that, and boys need that specifically from their fathers, right? They need to hear that this man who they look up to is proud of them. This man who they look up to is, I give you an example of how my dad operated. So like my one of my older brothers, he was really good. He was like an all-star in baseball, right? He was really good. Um, and my dad came to his game, right? And it was like an all-star game or whatever. And my brother had been playing great the whole season. And this one particular game, probably on part because of the pressure of knowing my dad was there, he had a terrible game. He went like 0 for 6 or something, right? And before the game was over, my dad got in his car and bounced, right? And so my
Oh
brother's
wow.
team lost. My dad got in the car and bounced and left. And this wasn't even anywhere close to our house. So my mom and my brother and I, we had to like figure out public transportation to get back, to the crib.
Oh, he left
2 hours.
y'all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, he left. He was
Oh,
out.
I was thinking. I
Wow.
didn't even think of that. I was just
Yeah,
thinking
I
he
thought it
just
was like
bounced.
separate cars and every.
No,
Yeah,
no, no,
yeah.
no, no,
Yeah,
no. He drove
got
us.
you.
And dude just bounced, right? And so now my brother, he had a bad game, right? And so like wouldn't how much would it have meant to him to have my dad put his arm around him and say, "Yo, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Bad game, don't worry about it. You're going to be fine the next day." But that wasn't who he was. And so, I think about the times where my son has, he's played sports or he whatever, and like I always want to be the first one to give him that hug. Dude, I'm proud of you. Don't worry about it. Tomorrow's another day, and whatever, we'll practice harder or whatever. Um and I just think like, my brother carried those type of incidents through his entire life, right? Like that shit affected him as he grew up and impacted his relationships. And it is a lot. I mean, I read somewhere that as adults we spend most of our time trying to fix the shit that we went through as kids. And I just never wanted my son to experience that. So I just always
Mm.
wanted to be like, I think one of the best things you can do for kids is instill self confidence, right? Like that's one of the things that
Yes.
will carry them through all the fucking hills and shit in life is you give your kids self confidence and and let them know that they're loved, right? Because if kids don't get love from their parents, they seek it otherwise in other places that aren't always necessarily positive, right? Whether it be
Yep,
like
Right.
that's
in
true.
gangs or in negative relationships or drugs or whatever. So you don't give your kids love, they're gonna seek love elsewhere, and it won't always necessarily be good for them.
Wow.
So with that being the case, who would you say inspired, not inspired you, but who would you say taught you how to be a father? Who was your influence that, okay, I want to be more like this person? You have the idea of who you don't want to be like, but who was it that you wanted to follow?
My
If there was
older,
anyone.
my oldest sister, her husband is like this dude Larry. He's like one of the best dudes I know. You know, he's
Mm.
positive brother, always upbeat. And and like he kind of took me under his wing, when he started dating my sister and they got married. Because I was like 5 or 6 when he met my sister and they got married or whatever. So he was always like this positive. He was always this positive influence in my life, and I would watch him with his sons, and how supportive he was with his kids. And to be
Gotcha.
honest, I mean, I used to watch a lot of TV, and I would be like watching, TV dads and shit, and I'd be like, man, I wish I could have that kind of, what I'm saying? I wish I could have that kind of relationship. And then I think ultimately, I think the real model that I used was just like, I just try to give my son everything that I didn't have, right? And so
Mm.
I think that's really became the basis for my, like, how I navigate fatherhood is. And and I recognize there's a little bit of danger in that, right? Because maybe sometimes I'm
Yep.
giving my kid some shit that he doesn't necessarily need, right? Like, because I'm giving him what I needed, but since he grew up differently than me, he may not necessarily need the same thing. So I'm kind of a little bit mindful of that. But I think every kid needs love. Every kid needs self confidence. Every kid needs to feel like, if something is going on, I could come to my dad and talk to him about anything, and he'll listen without judgment, you know what I'm saying? And not make me feel bad if I make a mistake. My dad is going to, accept that. He's going to talk to me in a positive way. Like, just all the shit that, like, if anything ever happened, I would never tell my dad shit because I know this dude is gonna flip the fuck out. This is gonna be a nightmare, right? So he was not the kind of person that you could sit down and be like, "Yo, dad, I'm going through this." I couldn't go to my dad for relationship advice. I
Mm.
couldn't go to my dad for like just life advice because he just wasn't that type. And so I think between my brother-in-law and the TV dads and just all the stuff that I didn't want, right? I think
Yeah.
that's kind of has helped me form the basis of just trying to be a good dad.
Now you hit on something that a lot of people don't really ever admit, but there's a lot of positivity in the old TV dad shows because there's some you have to be able to extrapolate what you need out of it.
Right.
But what are some of the biggest things that you got from actually the fictional fathers that really resonate in your life right now?
The understanding, like the patience, the understanding, the like reassurance, the self confidence building, like the Cosby dad, right? Like he was like, although as it turns out now, oh, Bill
Yeah,
Cosby
I
think
don't know
that's
where you're going with it, but
yeah,
I'll
that's
let you
no,
go ahead and rock
yeah,
out.
yeah. But the TV Bill Cosby, right? The TV dad, the Huxtables. I mean, dude was like everything that you would want in a black dad, right? Like, dude
Mhm.
was, he was successful, he was patient, he was loving, he was funny, he was, he didn't have any overt substance abuse issues. He always showed that, he was loving towards their mom, and and so those were always like the positives, right? And so I would look at that and be like, damn, man, like people really live like that? You know what I'm saying? Like, is that, what I'm saying? Is that really real? Or is this just TV and just my family is just, my dad is just typical. But my dad was typical of the dads in my neighborhood and shit. A lot of my friends didn't even have their dads around at all, right? So,
Right.
um, and they used to be envious that my dad was present, and I'd be like, well, damn, I actually wish dude was, I wish dude wasn't here sometimes, you
Right.
know?
Wow.
You know what? Speaking on the TV dad thing, I never thought about that until like just now. Um, Growing up without a dad, the TV dad thing, I didn't really rock with because it's like certain it like be an episode where they might be yelling at their son or something, and me not growing up with somebody actually disciplining me, a male disciplining me like that,
Hmm.
I'm like, I don't let nobody yell at me like
Right.
this. Like this is ridiculous. Like
Mm.
no. And so I look at the son on the show like, oh, he's just off.
Right.
Like 'cause that wouldn't happen to me.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I never even thought about that like that until we just thought about the TV dad.
Yeah.
So that's the way I thought about him.
That was always like
Wow.
my, like I just always wondered, like, what was really real? Is the real what my dad is, or is the real what's being depicted on TV? Didn't matter because that was always like those type of relationships is always that was always like what I aspired for, what I wanted. I was never gonna have it with my dad, but like that was always. And so I guess when I had my own son, man, and it's weird because I think I I would like to think I would have a similar relationship if I had a daughter. But I think for me, and I guess God gives you what you need. Because I think for me,
Yeah.
um, having a son and being able to have that experience with him, because with a daughter, the dynamics would be different. But being able to have a son, and like having all the do overs and watching him go through, all the stuff of growing up, it was healing for me in a lot of ways, right? And
Yeah.
I think because it helped heal me, it helped make me, allowed me to hopefully become a better dad.
Wow. So with that, when you're talking about the things that you pour in and it allows you and helps you to heal over time. But do you ever find yourself almost overcompensating in certain
Oh, for
areas
sure,
or doing too
for
much?
sure, and that's what I was saying earlier about like I wonder sometimes, am I guilty of giving him what he doesn't need, right? Because like
Hmm.
I'm trying to make sure I give him everything that I needed, but the shit I needed was based off of how I grew up and
Your
everything
environment,
different.
yeah.
So it's like
Right.
I'm giving somebody diabetes medicine and they got arthritis. You know what I mean? So
Right. I feel you.
right. So I'm always mindful of I don't want to do too much, but I think in terms of like love and shit, like you can't love your kids too much, right? Like you can
Of course.
not give them discipline, right? And you could not have boundaries for them. And I think kids need discipline, and I think
Hmm.
kids need boundaries. But you can never give your kid too much love. You can never give your kid too much self confidence. You can never tell your kid that you love him. I tell that kid I love him like 8 times a day, man. A kid can never hear that their parents love or believe in them or are proud of them. They can never hear that shit too much. So I guess if I'm gonna overcompensate, it's definitely possible. Um, but those main things, it's not possible. I don't think you can't tell your kid you love them too much, and you can't express to them how proud you are of them too much. It's just not. I don't think it's possible.
Oh, that's dope. That's dope. So we talked about it a little bit earlier, but the environment you grew up in versus the environment that your son is growing up in, the biggest differences for you as far as even location.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are some of the things that location and environment are some of the biggest differences that he's getting to experience and that you're actually experiencing with him that you didn't even see?
Well, so like, I mean, in my neighborhood, like it was a 99% black neighborhood, right? And so
Hmm.
and my school was 99% black, right? And so my son goes to a school that's like I don't know, there might be 30 or 40 black kids out of like 700 in the school. There's
Oh
probably
wow.
like 30 or
Phew.
40. Um,
Wow.
and
Mm.
the friendships that when I look at the pictures of him and his friends, it's real diverse, right? Because it's Middle
Yeah.
Eastern kids, it's Jewish kids, it's a little bit of everyone. And so the experiences that he has and what he gets exposed to, um, is just completely different. Where the house he lives in is different. Um, and like for me, I didn't really even get to I didn't even really rock out with white people until I got to college, right? Like I remember like my first roommate in college was this Jewish dude, and it was like I had never I didn't really have too many white friends, right? And so it was actually funny.
That's culture shock right
Oh
there.
man,
Yeah.
yo, like culturally, I just had never been exposed like to shit like I just didn't
Mm,
understand. And but I think and that was one of the good things about college is that it does expose you to a lot of different things, different people,
it's
different
true.
ideas, different concepts. Allows you to think about different shit. And my son, is growing up completely immersed in in different cultures or whatever, and he won't need. The only thing I'm worried about him is only thing is like I'm like I would love to see him go to a historically black college because I think I don't want him to miss out fully on the culture, right? Like the
Yep.
Carlton
Yep.
thing is cool, but I don't want him to fully be Carlton, right? So I'm just hoping that when it comes college time, I would love to see him go to like a historically black college.
That's been an ongoing conversation we've had on here, especially
Yeah.
if your kids are coming from a school where there's not a lot of blacks in the
Mm-hmm.
school, they're starting to push their kids towards HBCUs. But they say if you come from a black high school, they're starting to push you towards white colleges. So
Right.
that's just been a constant debate going on back and forth.
Well, and then even growing up, like my son, he came home like this was like he was in third grade, and he was like that. And my son's fairly light skinned kid, but he came home and he was like, "Dad, I wish my skin was lighter." Time out, time out, time out.
Mm,
Your skin is fine the way you are.
mm-hmm.
Let's have this conversation right here. But like,
Yeah,
but that was not a conversation that I ever heard. Like, I never thought that. I never wished my
because
skin.
you never,
Right.
yeah, you never thought about it.
Right, he and then he went to the like, Dad, I wish my hair wasn't as curly. No, dude, your hair is perfect the way it is. That was never a thought for me because all of the people that I went to school with, we all everybody kind of looked alike, right? So that's some of the differences between like, me and him, and I culture identity is a little bit of an issue because he doesn't see a lot of reflections of him, and so I think I've been trying to make it a point to make sure that he does have more kids, and do stuff with kids that look like him, right? Because I think the exposure is good, but you don't ever want to lose your identity either.
Yeah, that's something AJ and I talk about all the time. But sometimes my only thing with that is that it seems like when people you're perceived as being successful, you typically tend to be around more people that aren't our complexion
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because either where we live
Right.
or the experiences that we're allowed to provide our kids because we have the
Right.
resources and things like that. So it's like a balance that we have to find between keeping them in the best possible scenarios, but also, like you said, keeping an identity of your culture, of your people,
Mm-hmm.
and finding some rhythm. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you can get, sometimes that's a challenge. Now I
Right.
went through it with both of my kids. I'm not even gonna lie to
Right.
you. It's tough. It's like, okay, well, I got to go back home sometime. I got to go back to the boonies
Yeah.
sometime to make sure. But it's not their fault, and it's not a bad
Mm-hmm.
thing.
It's
But
not.
it's just another layer of parenting that we still have to figure out how to navigate.
Right. Right.
It's tough. It's really
And
tough.
and even like, and my kid is at the age where like we just had to have the talk, what I'm saying, about the police and dealing with police, and and it's funny because he just was shooting this movie over the weekend, and his character gets shot and killed by the police, and
Mm.
here he is with like a hoodie on, and they shooting this scene, and he's laying on the ground. LAPD lights is flashing. He's laying in a puddle of blood, and I'm
Wow.
sitting on set, and I'm just like, oh shit, like that really,
Wow.
you know what I mean? Like that
Hmm.
that image is burned in my freaking head, man.
Wow.
And and then he, he's like, but Dad, well, why would the police shoot me? And I was like, dude, don't you remember the conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the police are there to be positive, but you know, you can't ever run from them. You can't ever talk back to them. Don't ever reach in your pocket. Like the talk conversation. And while it probably isn't so much of an issue where he is, where like the environment that he's in, but at some point, you know, when he's 14, 15, 16, that could become an issue because he's already tall for his age. He looks like he's 14, you know, because he's so tall, and he looks older. And you know, you put him in a hoodie and walking out in the street, and you know, some cop, you know, could easily mistake him for being a kid that he's not.
Right.
So,
Now that's actually really interesting because the thing that I see personally is that I can have those talks,
mm-hmm,
but sometimes they don't quite resonate because, like you said, of what they're
right,
exposed to on a daily
right,
basis because of the privilege. That's what I call it. It's a little bit of privilege that they have that we didn't have growing
and
up, and
right,
so the people that they're around, you know, yeah, it doesn't resonate. But I will say that my oldest, my daughter, she didn't get it at first.
mm-hmm,
And then once she realized, you know what, it clicked. And that's what I was so happy about because I'm like, look, we're not telling you anything that's not true,
right,
but we can't make you understand it because you don't believe it. It's almost like you don't believe things are hot until it burn you.
right,
So
right, right,
it's
Yeah.
kind of tough.
right. Yeah, and so none of his friends' parents are having those conversations with their kids because you know
Exactly.
Billy
Exactly.
dad don't have to have that conversation with Billy
Yeah.
about you know how to act around the police. But if I don't have that with my son, I'm derelict in my duties
Yep.
as a dad, right? So I gotta have that
Facts.
conversation
Yeah, you and your friends are just alike until you're not.
with him.
And it comes
Right,
a point in time when you're not.
right,
And when
right,
Well, that's
everybody
the
lines
deepest thing
up, you're
you ever
totally
said.
different.
right,
I mean,
exactly.
because look,
That's man, ain't that the truth? Ooh, we
so how does that feel though? That because you talked about, you know, how you didn't necessarily want to be like your father, but now your son is following in your footsteps.
mm-hmm.
Mm.
Like that is an amazing feat. Like everybody that has a child, I can't say everybody, but most people when they have a son, you want your son to be a little you.
Right,
You know, take the best parts of you, but you really want them to be a little you. If I'm in the sports, I want to take my son to all the
right,
sports games.
right.
You know, if I'm in the tech, I want my son to be in the computers with me. You're in the field and your son follows you into it. Like how does that feel? How does he want to get into it?
Man, so like the feeling of watching your kid do what you do at a high level, there's no words for that. I'm sure like LeBron watches Bronny do that, and it's like you know the pride that he's got because he's not just doing it, he's doing it right. And so
Yep.
like
Yeah.
Excelling. Yeah.
when you see your kid do what you do at a high level, the level of like pride and like yo makes your chest swell out, man. You know what I'm saying? You gushing with like, yeah, that's my boy. But I also
Mm.
he and I talk often because I also recognize there's a pressure in him feeling like he has to follow my footsteps, right? Or he has. So I get
Yeah.
asked in interviews like, "How do you feel about your son following your footsteps?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you know, we do the same thing, but he's not following my footsteps. He's kind of blazing his own path, right? And I want to make sure that he knows he's free to do that, right? Like he's not Little John. He's Phoenix Nicholson actor who's got his own, you know what I'm saying? He's got his own way and I encourage him. That's why I keep his social media like our IG pages are completely separate and you know, I talk about him on my page, but I don't encourage people to follow him and I want people to follow him because they like him. Not necessarily because oh you know they're my fans and they follow him. I want him to have his own
Right.
identity and you know his
Right.
acting style. I don't want him to do. Although I will watch it and I'll be like, damn, I do this. I do the same shit. But I don't want him. I don't want him to be a replica of me because I always feel like I'm gonna be Del Curry to his Steph Curry, right? So I want him to like. I want him to
Mm.
just do you know develop your own thing. But still, in all. when I see him on set, and and I see, like, when he won Best Actor last year, and I was like, man, I can't even tell you, like, the amount of pride I had, and like, God damn, this kid's 10 years old, man. He just won Best Actor. Oh, it's no feeling, man. It's no feeling in the world like that. But I also know, as a son, I know how much that my dad is proud of me, how important that is, right? That, he looks at me like he's on set, and he looks over and he sees me, and I'm beaming, and I know that that's got to have a positive impact on him too, right? Because I know if I had been doing anything and I looked over and my dad was there, clapping, beaming, and looking, it would have affected me. So.
Like,
Eli, you coach your son, right?
yeah, man, got a game tomorrow.
So how does that feel? How does that feel? Does it feel different when you coach him as opposed to? Because I know y'all play golf, so that's more of an individual thing. So when he plays golf, you feel one type of way, but when you're
Yeah.
coaching him, is it something different?
So it's different when we play golf or when I'm coaching baseball. My first thing is baseball.
Okay.
And so when I'm coaching him on that, it's a little different. I'm really like a coach. You know what I mean? Like the old school. I can't help that.
Right.
I believe in kids getting better and working hard. So I treat him like everybody else. Even like before I came in, showered up to do this interview, we were out in the backyard. He wanted to learn how to pitch.
Okay.
That's my specialty. So I'm out there training him like he's actually somebody that I mentor. But when we're on the golf course, that's different
Right.
because that's more relaxing. That's even more difficult than
Okay.
baseball. And so I have to have a different level of patience when it comes to certain sports. Now he wants to get into tennis.
Wow.
Well, tennis, you got to have a little bit more patience on that too.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to basketball, or if it comes to football, or if it comes to baseball, oh no, I'm drilling you. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna treat you
Right.
like that. I'm gonna make sure you understand that um, there is no getting better if you don't practice.
Right.
I will encourage you when you do something great. I have to applaud
Mm-hmm.
you, but also when you're not listening or you're not focused or you doing the same thing over and over, that's different. I have to kind of get on you about that. But depending on what the activity is, I have to coach him accordingly.
I feel you on that 100% because I'm on set with my kid, and like, I try to stay in the background because the director is running his thing, but like I also am always looking for those teachable moments, right? And I'm like,
Yep, that's exactly right, right there.
I pull him to the side real quick, boom, 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 boom. And he's like, Dad, no, I got no. Shut the fuck up and listen to what I'm telling you. But I also tell him that, listen, man, I'm not gonna be around forever, right? And at some point, all you're gonna have is the memory of what I told you. So make sure you stop and listen to what I say, because there's gonna come a point where I'm not gonna be around, and you're gonna wish, damn, I wish my dad was around to tell me something. So, but I always look for those teachable moments, and try to help him. See, hey, I could do this better, or always be, you always gotta be professional on set, always be prepared, always be on time, blah blah blah.
Thank you for watching another episode of Just My Baby Daddy podcast. I know you liked what you saw. So what I need for you to do is go back and look at past episodes. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share our YouTube page, Just My Baby Daddy Podcast. And you can follow us on all social media at Just My Baby Daddy Pod.